Continuing our survey regarding the subtle operational impacts that speech now exercises on the secondary domain, we were up to noting what? This. That the promise of a future, remember we're up to C. Well, 3. In the things we were listing last time. Which, well, if I got to refresh your memory, the 3 we were listing was 1, 2, 3. So we were up to 3, which was that the promise of a future will always be kept as long as man talks. I didn't want to get us too distracted. This has nothing to do, insofar as these kind of verbal mappings, with the secondary world. I mean the primary world, which is how the secondary world, in one sense, has taken up the great banner of what happens after we die. Don't tell me that I go to Sacramento. Don't tell me that I just disappear. I don't want to think about it. But if you think, you got to think about it if you're ordinary. But there is no primary promise of the future. There is no such thing. There is no primary awareness of a lack of a future. If indeed we could separate man from the higher end of his nervous system up where he now talks and thinks. But back at the secondary level, the promise of tomorrow, in one sense, is what would seem to keep men going. To put it very crudely, as some of you did several nights ago, that in a sense you can wake up in the morning and in today's world you can be fairly ordinary and not have much of a reason to get out of bed. You can be living off the government dole. You can find somebody to help keep you up. It's just no problem anymore. You're not out having to scrounge for berries and hunt down wildebeest. You can live almost by doing nothing. And so at the primary level, sometimes the nervous system almost has no reason to get up. You can take that, at least figuratively speaking, so that you don't choke. And it is, in a sense, the different level of hormonal drive into the secondary, the talking, that makes people get up. Now, I do not have to get up today just to get enough money or just to go find food, but I want to get up today to get enough money to take my date out to that new restaurant that just opened. And so I've got to do that. But in other words, you do not primarily have to get up just to scrounge up food, because you've probably got enough fat on you. No offense, but you probably have enough weight on you to last for a while, that you wouldn't even have to get up for a few days. In the secondary world, I know it's presented in sort of a strange way, which may have been on purpose, but I was going to try to get you to look at it, to press on with the description, that the promise of tomorrow, which is certainly, once you see it, a secondary affair, there is no need for a promise at the primary levels, so it doesn't exist. But at the secondary level, the promise of tomorrow, be it tacit or direct, is kept for you individually. Forget about institutionally. It's kept for you individually as long as you can talk. Because what do you talk about? All right, you want figures? You want figures? Hey, I'll give you figures. 33 1/3% of the time you talk and think about tomorrow. Now, I know that's a very crude estimation I made. But at least, and probably more or less than that, you're talking about tomorrow. So the promise of tomorrow is kept so long as man talks about tomorrow. And a little more specifically, if it can be talked about, it can be acceptably done tomorrow. This is the basis. And as always, it is subject to some part of humanity standing there on the midway and hollering, the merry-go-round is going in the wrong direction. Or it's part of the people freezing their ass off in the South Pole, thinking that they should go further north. And they would not be satisfied if they could do it unless they could go, I guess, approximately 7,000 miles, so that they could be at the North Pole, freezing their gonzombos off, so that they could complain about that. If it can be talked about, it can be acceptably done, and people continue to attack one another, individually, collectively, and themselves, when pressed, for not doing things. The people attack themselves. There are even courses now, as I'm sure all of you know. There are people that you can pay. Are you serious? Yes. There are people who will take your money, sell you a book, sell you a course, telling you how to do things. Now we're talking about serious progress. I'm not talking about old time stuff like, how to save your soul and go to paradise, or how to fix your washing machine with silly putty. Now it is more progressive. They just teach you how to do things. You understand? Okay. How to efficiently use your time. There are people that you can pay that will come to your home and show you how to place your shoes in a most efficient manner in the closet. I don't want to go into this because I know that somebody will write and say, there you go, being sarcastic. And I'm just trying to report the news. That Kyroots even tried to give an update, a clarification, that if you talk about man impersonally, if it's possible, and let's just assume that maybe it is possible, if you can talk about man impersonally, many people on that basis will take it very personally. You can, as many of the great Eastern philosophers have pointed out, give many people the, well, there used to be a Tibetan term that was known as the RA, but you can make many people upset by treating them impersonally. And assuming you can do it. And if you can do it at all, rather than people going, my, this is interesting, I have never been treated impersonally, I've never heard humanity treated impersonally. No. Contrary, if they get any sense of that, and you're the one doing it, just hope that they're not armed. Because people take that very personally. And they're inclined to say such things, if you don't hear it, is like, I'm not sure what you're saying, you smart-ass mother so-and-so, but I don't like the way you're talking. I don't like that at all. And history, well, not the kind you know, but trust me. Some of it ripples out, and you get crude mythical reflections, but history is somewhat replete, whatever that means, with examples of that. Many people will take it quite personally, to the point of violence, without knowing why, if they sense that they, even their collective group, are being treated impersonally. But back to people attacking each other and themselves for not doing what they should after all of that. As long as you can talk, the promise of tomorrow is kept, and as long as you can talk about anything, it can be acceptably done tomorrow. It is why it is functionally okay, regardless of what people say, it is functionally okay to put off efforts until the future. Functionally okay, operationally correct to put things off. And now we've got to get fairly close to being impersonal about this, because here we go. Notice how much of modern time is taken up in the secondary world, with people complaining about themselves, each other, criticizing, paying people, joining a group so they can quit eating as much, pay somebody to help you quit eating as much, that kind of thing. And how much of the attack is, by God, why can't I quit eating now? Why can't I quit drinking now? Why can't I give up snuff and chewing tobacco today? All right, now notice, your life is full of it if you're about living at the ordinary level. The life of humanity is full of it. And you could say it is a flaw. It is a weakness. It is something we're striving to overcome. All right, that's all right for ordinary people. Now, you people go out and get a beer or something at the Asbach. Now you got to ask yourself this. Oh, sure, you don't have to, but you could. Just ask yourself this. Why is it that for at least 2 or 3, 4 good 1,000 years that ordinary people know about, from Homer on down to whoever it is nowadays. Is Mickey Spillane still alive? Did he ever get his hair fixed? As it seems as though humans cannot do what they should. Now, I'm not saying that. They say that. No, we're not doing right. Whether it be in religious context, or whether it be psychological, whether it be people attempting to improve themselves. That we just can't do it. I know what I should do, but I just can't seem to do it today. All right. Operationally correct is what we said. That is, how do you explain the fact, if you can do it impersonally, to think that that is in some way a fox pass on humanity's part when it has continued to dance and step correctly for 3,000 or 4,000 years? It's because there is nothing wrong. It is operationally okay to put off tomorrow. There is nothing wrong. That's why it is operationally acceptable. That, well, all right, I will start dieting tomorrow. That doesn't take anybody with an IQ much higher than yours or mine to make fun of that and say, boy, isn't that something? People that say that they have graduated from Harvard or even somewhere nice, the University of North Dakota. Somebody who lifts weights, jogs, married in the right circles, has a good home, drives a Volvo. And they have such a weakness, they drink, and they say that they know it's bad. They know it's beginning to harm their interpersonal relationships. If they live probably in California somewhere nice, if they live in Mississippi, they're tired of being arrested every week. But anyway, well, you see, you're laughing already. You think it's a joke because it would seem to be so easy to point to other people or yourself and go, isn't that something that humanity is so psychologically flawed, that we're all so weak, that we have spiritual defects, we have subconscious traumas that make us lack the willpower, and etc. Now look at it another way. Rather than finding fault with humanity, rather than just accepting, which ordinary intelligence would because it's tied to it, rather than just accepting that, yes, something is wrong, not just with other people, but with me. If it's wrong, why has there been no progress by their viewpoint for 3,000 years? Why aren't people any stronger, as they would call it, morally, spiritually, psychologically? Why aren't they any stronger? That's the kind of thing that, me being funny and say that's getting close to an impartial treatment of humanity, which they don't like, they just wouldn't hear it normally. There is nothing wrong. It is part of the promise of the future. Because you're not supposed to, at any ordinary level, you're not supposed to necessarily quit smoking or eating so much. If it seems like you are, then so be it. But then past that point, then to say, well, I'm just sure, that's the way I feel, and if we were playing along with a person, we'd go, all right, if that's what you say, okay. And they say, yeah, but that's not all of it. Not only do I know for a fact, not only do I feel in my heart of hearts that I should lose weight or that I should quit drinking just completely, I'm just sure of it. There's no doubt. And so you and I tell them, hey, we said okay. What the hell you want? And they say, yeah, but that ain't all of it. All right. And they say, what really gets me is I know that without any doubt. And it's always a matter, I think, all right, I'll quit drinking tomorrow. Or I've tried before, I'd say, well, all right, I'll just taper off. And I can't do it. And then I tell myself later, that's not going to work. I just got the cold turkey. I got to quit, and I can't do it. Now, no sane person, no ordinary intelligence would find any fault with that. They say, well, that's the way life is, and it's good that men try to do better, and I don't know why we can't do better. It's a personal view. I won't tell you anything. What it should tell you is that there is nothing wrong with that. That is part of the promise of the future. As long as you can talk, then it's acceptable. I didn't want to use the term, but I will. It's acceptable to put it off. A better description, I suggest to you, would be to say that as long as you can talk, there is a tomorrow, and as long as you can talk, then whatever it is that you apparently want to do can be acceptably done tomorrow. And of course, the tacit part to that verse being, you may not ever do it, but that isn't the point. You miss it if you say, wait a minute, if I keep putting it off, I'll never get it done. Yeah, but as long as you're putting it off, you're alive. Now, you don't get obvious with me. There was a Kyroots that said, and I quote, what can be talked about can be changed. Give you a little extension of it. What can still be talked about can still be changed. This is a kind of subterranean, extraterrestrial version of if it can be talked about, it can be changed, and a promise of tomorrow. But it has to do with, as long as you are talking, that which you talk about can be changed. It is, for example, history can be redone. And it'd be easy right now. We're living, here it is, circa 1991, with the celebration of that great, well-known pasta merchant, Christopher Colombo, And they're now rewriting history, you know, that he wasn't a discoverer, it was bad news what he did, and it's always something going on. But just for those of you that these tapes survive, you won't see it, it's just a prime example right now. It's nothing new, called rewriting history. And that, from any ordinary view, always has supporters and detractors. And there's always someone hollering, wait a minute, you can't redo history. Talk about your idiots. I hate to be critical. Sure you can. They're just doing it. No, they're not. Just because they say that so-and-so didn't happen, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Really? You know, stay right there, get your nose and tongue as close as you can to the window and go, you know, you can't do that. They just did it. That's live. Wait a minute, that merry-go-round can't go in that direction. And they announce, you people have been misled. It's not actually going clockwise. We've had it wrong all these years. It's going counterclockwise. And you, being the astute man with an extra beret, enough undergraduate credits to go out there in the street and go, no, the merry-go-round has no clothes. That's a different story, kid. That's the emperor. All right, the merry-go-round, just because they say it's not going counterclockwise, it's going just like it was. It's the same thing. You're not fooling me. They don't have to fool you. You're already fooled. Yeah, but just because they say it's not true doesn't mean it's not true. I hate to go much further with that, because if you don't understand that, then you should be out to the icebox getting a beer anyway. History is made to be redone. And if you're, at least you get just tied up in what would seem to be me using external history, look at man's individual private use of memory. You continually rewrite history. And it's attacked from psychological views. Psychiatry, common wisdom would have it that something's wrong with people that you ask a man, whatever happened to your first wife? I hadn't seen you in a few years. I heard you got divorced. Yeah, I did. God, I thought you made a great couple. What happened? I don't know. I just outgrew her. And if you're ordinary, then to go through this, you can do it right quick yourself. But another scenario, you could go to all of your old friends there in the hometown and say, I saw so-and-so, and he said, I outgrew her, and that wasn't nothing. She fell in love with a 17-year-old guitar player and run off. Well, I could have swore the way he was talking that was what happened. Well, you know how people are. They will rewrite memories. They'll rewrite their own history. And that's taken, again, as an attack. Like, yeah, that's not true. You got to stiff up and face up to reality. No, you don't. Not if you're ordinary. That's the point of being ordinary, is you don't. You keep waiting around. Hey, let's have a sissy revolution. What I want. Right. We'll all stand up and be wimps and be counted. We'll be respectable, I believe it was known as. It is the proper use. It's not, again, from their view, I understand that it seems to be pathological to some degree for a man to absolutely rewrite his history, for a man to deny, no, I left my wife. When everybody says, she left him. I mean, there's no secret about it. No, it's just he can't stand the thought of it. It's too big a blow to his male ego. Yeah. Maybe if he could go into therapy, maybe if he'd take up drinking. It's looked at as being less than acceptable. And it's not. It is purely acceptable. It is extremely acceptable. It is one of the proper uses of memory. Contrary to them saying, well, that's no way to treat your memory. Certainly it is. What the hell people think memory is for? That's like saying, well, you shouldn't torture the human language. You shouldn't take speech and try to take words and twist them into what they don't mean, such as, we all know that going like this is clockwise. Just because these bastards now tell us that the merry-go-round is going the same way, and now they're saying, sorry, we were wrong, it's counterclockwise. They are misusing language. They're ruining everything. That's right. Teach them a lesson. That's what it's made for. It's made for at least half the people, half the time, to be saying, wait a minute, we are, and then you got to fill it in. Or they are, misusing the language. Misusing your memory. Rewriting history in an unacceptable manner. In a quite specific way, you can see that is exactly what psychiatry, psychology, it's their use of talk therapy. They look at it another way, but it's to rewrite history. That is certainly not what they call it. They would, they say that the description is, well, whatever it is troubling you, if we can talk about it and reach certain depths and levels of whatever it is now. Oh, the wounded child. I like the wounded wimp. In your, no, the wounded child. That's the hottest one I'm up with. But at any rate, as if we talk enough, the things that are subconsciously, the things that are outside of your intellectual, willful control, which it's got to be if you're doing anything unprofitable, says psychiatry. You know, it's up to you. We didn't drag you in here, but if you say you're not satisfied with life, then you obviously you're fairly sane, aren't you? Then whatever it is that's bothering you, such as drinking, and you know it's bothering you, and it's probably hurting your family and your job and your driving record, and you probably won't stop. And for some reason you can't seem to. But it's not because you're no good, and it's not because you don't want to. So it's something that's just beyond your conscious grasp. So, do you want help? Okay, come on in. Then the thing is that in some way, at least anybody underestimates talk or thinks that I'm overestimating it, what's the basis? No matter how they rearrange it and whatever the latest term is in it, there is no such thing as psychiatry or any other aspect of man's secondary world without talk. And I keep referring to talk therapy. I know that they've changed the terminology, and many people surely would now consider, or if they heard me say talk therapy, they'd say that, well, you're still back in Freudian analysis and we're beyond all that. You're not beyond talk. It's still on the basis of talk. There's no way that you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, no matter what is called, a therapist of any kind, and go in and do not talk. No way. Any more than religion or anything else. It's not just those, but I want you to understand, no matter what they call it, all attempted treatment of one's psyche, one's psychology, whatever you want to call it, all the way from religion to psychology, psychiatry, is based on talk. That in some way, if we can talk this out, or if we can get you talking in the right way, if you can verbally bring out certain things, you will be helped, if not cured. What is that? What is it saying? What it's saying is, as long as you can talk about it, it can be changed. The very thing that quite ordinary people, quite sane, educated people, in case you don't see the connection 2 or 3 minutes ago where I was, that if you told them, wait a minute, somebody over here is suffering, or this guy over here, he keeps claiming that he left his wife, and everybody knows she ran off and left him. And the psychiatrist, not just an individual, the institution, which is nothing wrong with the institution. It's just an aspect of life's own nervous system. Would say, well, you know, we can't drag the man in, but he could certainly benefit, probably, by therapy. When therapy is based upon the same thing, don't you understand? Because they would say, if you ask the psychiatrist or you ask psychiatry, the institution, well, what do you think about a man who we all know is lying? Except I believe that he could be tortured and he would know, and he still could not admit that his wife left him. In the institution would go, oh, yeah. Sympathy, like, well, you know, that's not that unusual. The man just cannot stand it. And so you'd say, well, is that in any way normal? Well, no. It's not. A man has got to. Many things in the secondary world are painful, but a man, if he's going to be healthy at all, if he's going to be able to cope with life in any way, he has got to face up to what's going on. In other words, him rearranging his memory. He has taken history and rewritten it in an unacceptable and unprofitable way. Okay. So then how do they treat it? Do you see? By the same method. Oh, I know. Back at some sequential level, if that's as well as you can think, it won't fit. But do you hear? It's still on the basis that if it can be talked about, it can be changed. See, as always in the city, you can't have it both ways. All the little kiddies cannot stand there and see that the merry-go-round can go in both directions and another one. Simultaneously. Not just now and then, and not just, well, wait a minute, I see it going this way, and now somebody hollered, wait a minute, they reversed it. And I looked around, it hadn't been reversed, they just changed the name of it. They put up a sign saying, now the merry-go-round goes to the North Pole instead of the South. Hey, I'm no idiot, it's going the same way. All they're doing is misusing language, they're rewriting reality, history. Notice, the institution of psychiatry, and don't get hung up on that, of course, ordinary sequential reason says that it is not to your benefit to deny reality, to deny what has happened to you. It is not to your benefit, as painful as it is, for you to swear that you left your wife, that you got sick of her, or your husband, when she ran off and left you, and everybody knows it. I mean, it's a known fact. You need help. What's the help? To rewrite history. The same thing. Now, wait a minute, if we talk about this enough, you'll get over this delusion. Because I can't stop and drag everybody through the gutter, through the higher realms of intellectual insight in the city, because in the city, if anybody was dumb enough to listen to all this, some ordinary, they'd say, wait a minute, I hear what you're trying to do, but rewriting history is not what analysis would do. It's to straighten out the defect. It's to straighten out the psychological stigmatism that this man is suffering. Okay, I can do that. I just did it. I just said it. But what is it? As long as you can talk about it, you can change it. And they'd say, yeah, but we're talking about change it for the better. Well, I didn't qualify it. Give me a bloody break. I just pointed out if you can talk about it, it can be changed. You don't see? It's not all that complicated. It's always back to this from a harsh revolutionist view. I apologize to all our wimpy, sissy friends in video land, which, of course, is a lie because we don't have any. But as always, what it amounts to, in the secondary world, there is no way out. It's a closet. It's a finite world. That whatever seems to be the cure is what made you sick. Or, okay, we'll do it the other way. Whatever made you sick is the cure. It's the Smith brothers. Whatever happened to them? When you had a good cough? They were shaking hands? Nobody asked me, but now I think about it, I like that better than merry-go-round, but that's too old for most people, isn't it? When you realize that even at sort of a minimal level, if you want to take off there that we mentioned a few nights ago, of just looking at talk as being its own justification, which it is, but to give you somewhere to dive off a little bit further into the infested into the pool. To even just look at talk as being just its own justification, no matter what it is, just yammer, yammer, yammer. Just, blabber, blabber, palaver, palaver. Even at just looking at talk as being its own justification, it still does the kinds of things that we were mentioning earlier a few nights ago, that it assures man of an ongoing experience, oftentimes known as life. It guarantees that he will live in a state free from those annoying conclusions, and C, that as we said, it will guarantee that the promise of the future is always kept. Now, once you see all of that, then you would have to silently to yourself, and hopefully no damage to your tires, you would have to recognize the absolute folly of attacking any of man's secondary activities or institutions, such as religion, psychology, economics, meteorology, criticism as a discipline. You have to recognize that. Now, I'm talking about, of course, from an individual revolutionist view, not from out there because it's necessary out there, but to recognize any feeling of aggression, hostility, criticism you have of anybody, any institution, any aspect of life, the folly of their activities on the basis that they never can achieve their aims. No one can. No institution. But insofar as it being worthy of any attack, is to recognize that they are succeeding so long as they talk about success tomorrow. There is the success, as long as they're talking about it. But from any kind of ordinary view, you could be as sarcastic as you wanted to. And I know that you would like to be very sarcastic. But to say, wait a minute. All right, first off, let's laugh at religion. Let's laugh at Western religion, or Eastern religion, if you want. Let's laugh that here they have been preaching, proclaiming, raising money, fighting wars, killing people, trying to achieve X stated goal. And they have had, and fill it in, 3,000, 4,000 years, and they're no closer Or you can say, wait a minute, now we've come out of the age of superstition, but look, even in the Western world we have, from Papa Freud on down, we have now what? 60 or 70 years. Academic, scientific, grant-based work, exploration into the world of psychiatry, and people are no better off. There is no greater assurance, there is no better chance you'll achieve your aims of being helped, much less cured, under analysis than you would have in 1909. My God, I'd pull out my hair if I wasn't Mickey Spillane. You're wrong. To call it folly is to be kind to wimps and sissies. It's just ridiculous. It's insane. Or you're not a revolutionist, whichever one you find most offensive. To find any fault because men and institutions cannot achieve their aims. If they're talking about it, their aims are being achieved. What do you do? No, wait a minute, we're talking about them. Yeah, I know. Them sure do look familiar at times, don't they? Well, I know what it is. Now, I shouldn't take cheap shots at you fish, because there is something having to do with, there's a film over most fish's eyes to where when you look out the water, you see what appears to be other fish. And at times you even see a distance between you and other fish. And I understand that. Well, that's why I have taken so much time to try and help all you worthy carps and halibuts. Having only a few more minutes, hard to just point out right quick since I drew it up. Kind of an aside note, I've done it many times, but picking out what surely to all of you, since I've rubbed it in so often, would appear to be the most salient and probably the most active extremes in the secondary world of using like religion and psychology or psychiatry as being the kinds of examples of things that do not achieve their aims. It is everything. Since I mentioned it, economics, and I'm taking, I guess, easy shots, or maybe some of you think I do since we've used them before. Meteorology, literary criticism, but everything in the academic world, everything in the scientific world, everything in the soft sciences. Why do they call some of them soft sciences, Papa? He asked. And the old man said, you figure it out. Everything in the secondary world is a living example, because none of them can satisfy their own stated aims. And as surely you saw several nights ago, I used the example, still using religion and psychiatry, they will admit it. Those highest, those most respected, those apparently with the most understanding of the discipline or the science will be the first to admit, well, you're right now, we have certainly not cured this planet of neuroses and bedwetting. Our religion will say, no, we certainly have not stopped all sin. I'm using their descriptions. Whatever they want to call it. I just say, well, tell me what your aim was. And if they tell you, and I say, well, how's it going? They'll say, well, it's an uphill battle. And so we could treat them personally, assuming they didn't want to shoot us or burn us at the stake. But then some people standing around the edge would go, ha, 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 I could have told you that. They hadn't done crap. All they want to do is collect money. All they want to do is get a fee, or whatever their attack is. And that's not so. I keep using religion and psychiatry to try to give you that kind of extreme, everyday operational examples on that kind of spectrum. But how about criticism with a capital C as a real intellectual and scientific, or not scientific, an intellectual discipline? That's really, if you could get real good instead of seeing, or me using religion and psychiatry, would be criticism. The big C, like a real intellectual discipline. That would be like the ongoing right in the middle of it. Which, what could be easier once you see it to stick out your tongue at, or at which to stick out your tongue, and make fun of than criticism? What would be easier to criticize than the intellectual discipline of criticism? I mean, Jesus, all you got to do is have just a little smart-ass running your hormones, and you could just almost bend over laughing, thinking about, wait a minute, you mean people go to school? People have paid big bucks to go to an Ivy League school, or even a nice one out in the Midwest, and they have majored, they got a degree, that they now, a man has a PhD, he calls himself, at parties after a few drinks, I'm Dr. Wingate, hoping nobody will say, well, could you see what this is? No. I'm not one of those cheap doctors. My degree is in criticism. And you could just almost fall down already. Like, wait a minute. You're an expert in, wait a minute, what? Criticism, that's your field? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I have books. I make some nice money. Piece of change here and there. I appear around. Wait a minute, and your field of expertise is criticism. That's correct, sir. Is that not funny if you want to be smart-ass? No. It is like taking religion and psychology and what would seem to be their shortcomings, but impersonally, and put them all together, and criticism wraps it up. That is life continually having to reinvent itself. That is the secondary world. It cannot live without continually reinventing itself. And how do you reinvent yourself? You have got to be less than complete to start with. You cannot go to bed on any given day. Life, man, economics, weather forecasting, religion. You cannot go to bed, or suddenly at night it's bedtime, you think, well, here it is, finally, after X amount of years, after 40 years, after 40,000 years, got it. If you lay down and go to sleep, I'm about to tell you, you ain't going to get up. But if you get up tomorrow, it is reinvented. But criticism would seem to be the continual kind of that great Eastern symbol of the snake eating its tail, because there's no end to criticism. Well, any more than there is anything else in secondary world. But criticism is just a splendid example, because what is easier to criticize than those criticizing? And if you want to try and see, well, wait a minute, if there's any area, I'm speaking now from ordinary intelligence, if there's any area that doesn't even come close to having an objective standard, how can you even begin to say there's some kind of objective way to measure, quote, criticism? You know, you people are idiots, an ordinary man could say. He could even say, well, I'm not even very religious, but at least there's something approaching. The people believe there's some kind of crude objective standard. They're religious, they're Vedimicum, they're holy text. Or psychiatry, they have statistics, they have the works of Freud. But Jesus, to say that there is some kind of basis for a man to step there and say, yes, I have a doctorate, I have important books, I get big bucks for showing up, and my field is criticism, you know, of art, culture in general. On what basis? I'm speaking now for an ordinary person. Anytime I squeal like that, it's well, I try to play along with the ordinary. They'd go, on what basis? And of course, the only answer is, well, my basis. Of course, that gets in another field where I was going to try to drag us to shortly, maybe next time. Of course, it's not just on his basis, because you can say, wait a minute, you mean you are considered to be, let us say, America or England or France's leading cultural critic? Yes, I am, as a matter of fact. On what God almighty basis? Well, if you're trying to attack me personally, he says, may I point out to you that my undergraduate work was done at Oxford, and my doctorate came from the University of Paris. That you can point and talk somewhere else. But it's still on the basis, but that criticism would be the prime example of life in the secondary world continually reinventing itself. Au revoir to you in Mississippi.